Would you worship a statue you made with your own hands? This was the question burning in young Ibrahim's mind as he watched his father carve lifeless idols, a child destined to defy an entire kingdom for the truth. Prophet Ibrahim was born in the land of Babylon a very, very long time ago. He was given deep smarts even when he was a little boy, and this made him truly, truly special. He arrived in a period when folks praised the sun, the moon, the stars, and even the statues carved from rock. Ibrahim's dad was a carver, and he fashioned those figures with his own hands. His father never praised Allah at all. As a youngster, Ibrahim would sit and watch his father shaping those images from rock. Ibrahim felt curious about those odd-looking images, and sometimes he would play with them. But when he saw the same image in temples, he felt puzzled. He wondered why people were kneeling before these stone figures, so he chose to ask his father about it. One day, while his father was carving a figure of Mahaduk, the messenger asked, "Father, why are people praising these playthings you make yourself? They stand for our gods." His father snapped back in anger. But even though Ibrahim was only 7 years old then, he could not stop his laughter. Ibrahim was now 16. He had grown in learning and insight. He knew that Allah alone was the true God. His dislike for the statues deepened as he grew up. Whenever he went to the temple with his father, he felt sad to see people still praying to those carvings. One day, Ibrahim left home to seek Allah, the one true God. He walked for a very long time and at last reached a nearby hill. He climbed it and sat by a cave. He stayed there for a long while, and when he looked up, he saw a bright star. When he saw how lovely the star was, he wondered if it could be Allah. But after some time the star vanished and he knew that it was not Allah, since the true God would never disappear. After some time, the moon rose. The moon was very, very lovely, so Ibrahim wondered if the moon could be Allah. He sat there staring at the moon for many hours, but when the moon sank below the edge, he knew that the moon was not Allah. Ibrahim felt sad, but he stayed on the mountain peak watching the edge. Dawn came, and then the sun appeared. He gazed at the shining sun and wondered again if this could be Allah, since it was bigger and very bright. Yet at dusk, as the sun sank below the edge, he knew it was not Allah, because the true God would never sink. Then Ibrahim knew the true God could never be made. He grasped that Allah made everything, even the sun, the moon, and the stars. He then knelt on the earth, giving his thanks. He knew that Allah had just shown him the truth. He also knew that Allah had picked him to be a messenger. God had chosen him to lead his people. A whole new life awaited Prophet Ibrahim. He then journeyed back home to share the joyful news with his father. But when his father learned what he said, he became very, very furious. "How dare you deny my gods?" he roared. "Oh my father, come with me. I will show you the right way. Allah will punish you if you do not say sorry," the messenger begged. "I will have people hurt you if you do not stop talking like this," his father yelled. Then his father ordered him to leave the house. Ibrahim felt sorrow for his father, for he had turned him out. He knew there was nothing more he could do, so he walked away. He then traveled to other people across his land to teach them. He knew that this was his job to call folks back to Allah. Ibrahim walked into the market and cried out to them, "Allah alone is our only true Lord. There is no other God but Allah. None deserves worship except Him. I will never kneel before those idols again." The people in the market turned very angry when they heard his bold words. "Why do you honor these objects?" he asked. Can't you see they have no power? The crowd told him to go away, so Ibrahim had to step out of the market. Then the messenger made a plan to prove that those idols were not true gods. He waited for a quiet night to act. One day the town held a great loud festival by the riverbank, and the messenger knew everyone would have gone to join it. He waited until he was certain the streets were completely empty. Then he grabbed a hatchet and entered the shrine. Shelves of statues filled the inner hall, and the messenger began to destroy them one after another. He broke every image except the largest figure dwelling in the center. Carefully, he placed his hatchet around its neck like a necklace. Then he silently slipped out and closed the door behind him. Early the next morning, all the townspeople arrived at the shrine to pray and froze when they saw the statues smashed into bits. Shards of stone lay scattered everywhere. They came in groups and wondered who could have carried out such a shocking deed. "Someone from the market yesterday," one voice said. "He spoke out loudly against our gods. I know who it was. His name is Ibrahim," another person called out. They marched off to find Prophet Ibrahim and led him back to the shrine. "Did you destroy our gods?" they demanded. Pointing at the largest idol, he answered, "Ask it yourself. Maybe it can tell you if it can speak." This made the crowd even angrier. "You know these statues can't speak," they shouted. Then Ibrahim replied, "Then why do you honor objects that cannot speak, see, or hear? Have you lost your senses?" The villagers felt ashamed as they looked at the broken statue fragments across the floor. Some realized Ibrahim spoke the truth, but many remained furious and sought revenge. They decided to get even and said, "Let's burn him alive. We'll make the largest flame anyone has ever seen and hurl him in," another cried. All agreed it was a fine plan. They collected every piece of wood they could find and built a roaring fire. Then they bound Ibrahim's wrists and ankles and set him on a sling to be flung into the flames. It was then that a heavenly angel stood before the messenger and asked if he desired any request to be granted. The messenger could easily have asked the angel to rescue him from the blaze, but he did not. "All I ask is that Allah be pleased with me," he replied. What came next was astonishing. As the messenger landed among the flames, the fire instantly turned cool. It consumed only the cords binding him, and no harm touched his body. He remained seated inside the embers as though he were resting in a garden, singing praises to Allah. The onlookers could see nothing, so they waited for the fire to burn itself out. Finally, when the flames died down, the messenger rose from the ashes without so much as a singe on his skin. The crowd gasped at this miracle, but most still seethed with anger over the destroyed idols. They resolved to bring the messenger before their ruler's court. Soldiers seized Ibrahim, bound his wrists and ankles, and led him, hands chained, to the palace of King Nimrod. King Nimrod had learned that the messenger had smashed the very statues they worshipped. "Explain why you broke the gods we honor," he demanded. Ibrahim answered, "They are nothing but false images. They cannot be God." Nimrod pressed on, "Then who is the one true Lord?" Ibrahim replied, "Allah alone. He gives life and takes it away." Enraged, the king stood and declared, "I can also give life and take it. Watch and learn." He ordered 2 servants into the hall. At his command, the guards struck and killed the first. Nimrod gloated, "See, I give death." Then he raised his hand for the second to be slain, but suddenly he cried, "Stop! Spare him, I can give life too." Turning to Ibrahim, he boasted, "You saw that happen." Calmly, Ibrahim said, "If you truly hold that power, bid the sun rise from the west." Struck silent and unable to reply, the furious king released him. Word of Ibrahim's courage and faith spread across the realm. For many years, he invited the people of Babylon to worship Allah alone, yet only two believed: his nephew Lut and a noble woman named Sarah, who later became his wife. Seeing that no one else would heed his call, Ibrahim decided it was time to leave. The messenger then asked his father to join him, but his father refused. So the messenger, Sarah, and Lut set out on their long journey. They traveled through Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, calling people to Allah. They helped any poor they met and performed many kind deeds that brought joy. Meanwhile, Lut moved on toward the Dead Sea and settled there. After a few months, the messenger married Sarah, who was a devoted believer, and they both hoped for children who would carry Allah's message. After some time, the messenger and his wife journeyed again for many days across the desert. One day, they entered the land of a cruel king. This wicked ruler heard of Sarah's beauty and sent a soldier to fetch the messenger before him. The soldier led Ibrahim to the king's court. "Who is this lady with you?" demanded the king. Ibrahim answered, "She is my sister." The king ordered, "Bring Sarah here. I wish to meet this famed beauty." Ibrahim turned to Sarah and warned, "Do not say that you are my wife. Tell him you are my sister." When Sarah arrived at the king's palace, he was struck by her beauty and reached out to touch her. But the instant his hand neared Sarah, it froze in place. Terrified, the king begged, "Please pray to Allah for me, and I will never harm you." Sarah prayed, and his hand was healed like magic. As soon as he realized his hand worked again, the foolish king tried to grab her once more, and again his hand stiffened. "Pray for me again. I promise I won't hurt you," he pleaded. Sarah prayed a second time, and his hand was restored. At that moment, the king saw that Sarah was not an ordinary woman, so he offered her a gift, one of his Egyptian maidservants. Her name was Hajar. When Sarah reached home, the messenger asked her what had happened. "Allah showed that cruel king he was wrong and provided me with this maidservant Hajar," Sarah explained. Many years passed and the messenger grew older. His hair turned white, but he kept inviting people back to Allah. Sarah too had aged and knew she could no longer have a child. So she asked the messenger to marry their servant Hajar, and she prayed earnestly to Allah for that blessing. A few months later, Hajar gave birth to a son, and they named him Ismail. By then, the messenger was very elderly. One morning he woke with a clear feeling that Allah had a task for him, so he went to Hajar. "Get Ismail ready for a long journey," he said. They traveled for many days until they came upon a dry valley by Mount Al-Marwa. There, the messenger paused and quietly began to walk away. His wife hurried beside him. "Where are you leaving us?" she cried, but he said nothing and continued on. At last, she understood this was Allah's command. He prayed to Allah to provide food for her and their son, and asked him to send kind people to find them. Hajar drew on the small amount of water the messenger had left, but it quickly ran out, and both she and Ismail grew very thirsty. She climbed the nearby hill of Al-Marwa in hope of sighting someone, yet there was no one in view. They had only a small skin of water that the messenger left, and soon it ran out, leaving both Hajar and her son very thirsty. Hajar climbed the nearby hill called Al-Marwa, hoping to spot someone, but saw no one. Then she hurried to Al-Safa, but again the way was empty. Desperate, she ran back and forth between those two hills 7 times, calling for help. On her last climb up Al-Marwa, weary and nearly fainting, she heard a gentle voice. Trusting in Allah, she stayed still and watched as an angel dug into the sand. At once, cool, clear water sprang up. Hajar rushed to the new well and built a small basin around it. She cupped the water in her hands, drank deeply, filled her water pouch, and ran back to Ismail. This miracle spring became known as Zamzam. A few days later, passing travelers saw birds skimming the air above and followed them to the water. They found Hajar and her child, shared the blessing, and settled there. Soon, a small community grew around Zamzam, and Ismail grew into a fine young man admired by all. After many days, the messenger decided to return to Mecca to see Hajar and Ismail. When he arrived, he learned that Hajar had passed away, but his son was safe and well. Overjoyed, he hugged Ismail and thanked Allah for protecting him. That night, the messenger had a deep dream in which Allah asked him to offer his beloved son as a sacrifice. At first, he thought it was only a dream, but when it came again, he knew it was a command. Early the next morning, father and son set out for Mount Arafat. Ismail, trusting his father and Allah, agreed to be bound so he would not struggle. As the messenger raised his knife, an angel called out, and a ram appeared in Ismail's place. Allah provided this ram to be sacrificed instead, and both father and son rejoiced in their faith. After this test, Allah told the messenger and Ismail to rebuild an ancient house of worship in the valley. Together, they laid the stones of what would become the Kaaba. When they set the special black stone in its corner, they prayed, "O our Lord, accept this from us." Centuries later, millions of pilgrims still walk around that sacred building. Years later, 3 strangers, actually angels, visited the messenger and Sarah. Though she was very old, they brought the good news that she would have a son. Sarah laughed at first, but within months she gave birth to Ishaq, Isaac, just as the angels had said. Ishaq grew to be a kind and wise man, and both he and Ismail carried on their father's mission, calling people to worship Allah alone. Finally, after a long, faithful life of 175 years, Prophet Ibrahim passed away. He left behind a lasting legacy, a simple house of worship, a deep trust in Allah, and a family of faithful believers. To this day, Muslims honor him as Khalilullah, the friend of Allah, and remember his example of complete trust and love for the one true God. Enjoyed this? Hit like, share with others, and subscribe for more. Become